When we think about the ancient world, we usually picture this silent, chilling majesty. Think of the massive ivory statue of Zeus at Olympia, just staring down at humanity with absolute calm. But today, we're heading east to the coast of Asia Minor for this explainer. We're going to explore a structure that the ancients themselves called the most beautiful thing ever erected by human hands. Like, even more beautiful than Zeus's home. We're talking about the legendary Temple of Artemis, a place of absolute awe, mystery, and unparalleled grandeur.
But before we get totally lost in how gorgeous it was, we have a seriously dark historical irony to unpack today. How exactly does a breathtaking wonder of the ancient world meet its end, not by an invading army or, a natural disaster, but by a total nobody who basically just wanted the ancient equivalent of internet clout? It's a deeply fascinating story, so let's just dive right in and figure out how this happened.
Section 1. The Jewel of Ephesus. To really understand the crime, we have to understand the victim here. Ephesus, which was located right near modern-day Selçuk in Turkey, wasn't just another city. It was this vibrant, massive crossroads where the empires of the ancient world, Greeks, Persians, Romans, Phoenicians, all collided in these beautiful streets paved with marble. And right in the beating heart of this metropolis, that's where our temple stood.
Now, the Romans called her Diana, but we'll stick with her Greek name, Artemis. When you hear that, you're probably picturing the classic Greek Artemis, right? The athletic virgin, the fierce hunter running through the wild. We'll scratch that. The Ephesians worshipped a totally different deity. Their Artemis was an incredibly ancient, powerful, almost oriental maternal figure. She was adorned with these symbolic protuberances, which a lot of scholars interpret as multiple breasts, and she wore this striking crown shaped like city walls, plus robes just absolutely covered in bulls, griffins, and bees. This was a deity from a time way, way before Homer. So you have this ultimate goddess of nature. Where do you build her house? Surprisingly, they chose a literal swamp near the Castor River. At first glance, you're probably asking yourself, why on earth would you build the largest, heaviest marble structure imaginable in soft mud? Well, it turns out it was a stroke of absolute engineering genius. That soft, humid soil essentially acted as a giant natural shock absorber against the constant earthquakes that hit the region.
Section 2. Engineering and Magnitude. To honor their goddess, the Ephesians decided they were going to break literally every architectural record in the book. After an earlier version of the temple faced floods and invasions, they set out around 550 BC to build something truly colossal. And they got funding from none other than King Croesus. Yes, the literal guy behind the phrase, riches Croesus. The footprint was insane, 115 meters long by 55 meters wide. To put that into perspective, that is significantly larger than a modern American football field.
But the most striking feature? 127. That staggering number represents the massive, pure white marble columns that held up the roof. And we're not talking standard columns here. Each single one of them stood 18 meters high. That is roughly the height of a 6-story building. Their bases were intricately carved with mythological reliefs of gods and winged creatures, and the tops had these rare, delicate Corinthian capitals with carved acanthus leaves. It was just a total marvel of ancient engineering.
But here's the thing you really need to grasp. This wasn't just a religious building. The Temple of Artemis was the vibrant, beating economic heart of the ancient world. It basically functioned as a major bank. It was a sanctuary of asylum, meaning absolutely no one could be arrested on its grounds. Period. It also served as an open-air art museum crammed with world-class paintings and sculptures. And on top of all that, it was a massive hub for sacred tourism. Pilgrims poured in from all over, bought silver souvenirs, and pumped unbelievable wealth straight into the city.
Section 3. The Night of the Fire. With so much wealth, beauty, and religious power centralized in one single place, it seemed completely untouchable. But we're shifting gears right here, going from the absolute peak of architectural majesty straight to the brink of a totally senseless disaster. July 21st, 356 BC. On this specific, fateful summer night, the entire course of history swerved. An event took place that would permanently scar the city of Ephesus and, honestly, echo through the next few millennia. Now, before we look at the crime itself, there's this incredible ancient rumor about why it was allowed to happen at all. Legend actually says that on this exact same night, hundreds of miles away in Pella, Macedonia, a boy was born who would grow up to become Alexander the Great. The ancients seriously believed that Artemis, who was the protector of childbirth, was just too distracted helping deliver the future conqueror to protect her own magnificent cedar-roofed sanctuary. Crazy, right?
Section 4, the Herostratus effect, which of course leaves the door wide open for our villain. Because on that night, a single man walked into the temple, not an invading army, just one guy. He didn't want to steal the silver, he didn't want political power. He was a complete nobody. Historians think maybe a shepherd or a failed mercenary. But he craves something that feels incredibly modern. He wanted pure, unadulterated attention.
He managed to achieve what we now call herostratic fame. That's that dark psychological drive to seek eternal notoriety by committing a crime and destroying something beautiful. Herostratus essentially reasoned, look, I can't build anything great, but if I destroy the most beautiful work of men, my name will never be forgotten. So he took a torch to that magnificent Lebanese cedar roof. The extremely dry wood basically acted like a giant pyre. The flames devoured the painted columns, melted the gold details, and shattered the statues. By morning, the literal center of the world was just a forest of blackened smoking stone.
The response from the Ephesians was completely merciless, but it was also profoundly ironic. The fury of the citizens was absolute. Herostratus was captured, tortured, and executed right away. But they felt death wasn't enough. They issued a damnatio memoria, a strict decree forbidding anyone from ever speaking or writing his name again under penalty of death. They wanted to literally erase him from existence. But here is the ultimate irony. The attempt to erase his name is exactly what caused a historian named Theopompus to write down the bizarre decree in the first place, cementing Herostratus' twisted legacy forever. He literally got exactly what he wanted.
Section 5. Rebirth and Final Fall. But hey, the story doesn't just end in ashes. The Ephesians were a fiercely proud and defiantly resilient people. They absolutely refused to accept this ruin as the end. Almost immediately, local women started donating their personal jewelry, and cities from all across Asia Minor started sending funds to help rebuild. They were so proud, in fact, that years later, when Alexander the Great, who is now a fully grown world conqueror, shows up and offers to completely finance the reconstruction himself, the Ephesians actually turned him down. They hit him with this brilliantly diplomatic rejection. A god does not build a temple for another god. Alexander completely understood and just stepped back. So the Ephesians went ahead and rebuilt the temple even better. They put it on a raised platform to avoid flooding, brought in world-class architects, and it stood proudly for another 600 years, drawing Roman tourists and emperors alike.
But all things must pass, right? In the 3rd century AD, a Germanic tribe known as the Goths sweeps through the area like a hurricane, and you guessed it, burns the temple down once again. And this time there was no rebirth. Christianity was rapidly on the rise, and paganism was in a really steep decline. So instead of rebuilding, the locals just started looting that magnificent marble to construct their own churches, houses, and fortresses. Slowly, the swamp just swallowed the foundations whole.
Section 6. What remains of the wonder? Let's just slow down for a second and reflect on the melancholy passage of time here. We are talking about a world wonder turning into an almost forgotten myth. For centuries, this incredible temple was literally just a passing name in ancient books.
When you look back at its timeline, it's quite a journey. You see the majestic rise with King Croesus in 550 BC, the tragic, fiery fall by Herostratus in 356 BC, that final fatal blow by the Goths in the 3rd century AD, and then absolute silence, nothing. Until 1869, when an English archaeologist named John Turtle Wood spends 7 grueling years digging in the mud before finally rediscovering the ancient foundations.
If you travel to Ephesus today, the reality is stark and honestly pretty lonely. You're not going to find a sprawling marble sanctuary. You'll just find a swampy, muddy field scattered with giant blocks of stone looking a bit like abandoned toys. There's exactly one pieced-together column standing on the site today, and it usually has a literal stork's nest perched right on top of it. If you want to see the true fragments of this marble dream, the multi-breasted goddess statues, the old coins, the column reliefs, you have to visit the nearby Selçuk Museum to find them.
So all of this leaves us with one really crucial question to chew on. In the end, did art truly conquer destruction? On one hand, you have Herostratus, an ugly, enduring stain on human memory, and the ultimate symbol of pathetic vandalism. But on the other hand, the temple he tried to destroy was rebuilt so beautifully that it became even more famous, forever securing its spot as a wonder of the ancient world. It survived in human memory long, long after the swamp swallowed its stones. I'll leave you to ponder that strange balance between creation and destruction. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer, and definitely keep questioning the history around you.